Hi everyone and welcome to the Healthy Hound winter webinar. And today we're joined by Carol Gray, the expert vet that has kindly given us time to talk about all things greyhounds, which is a subject that all three of us could talk about all day long. I'm Jade, I'm the marketing coordinator here, and I'll pass you over to Tom.
I'm Tom. I'm the partnership executive at Greyhound Home in UK. And as Jade said, we're joined by Carol. So Carol, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Hi everyone, my name's Carol and I'm a vet with lots of experience in owning greyhounds, and I've also worked in training kennels and done some track work.
Perfect. So we've got a lot of knowledge here. With it being the winter webinar, I think it's only right that we discuss about the cold weather, the icy conditions, because we have just literally had about a week's worth of very, very cold weather. And I know my greyhounds were a bit like, this is a bit extreme, and they were hanging by the radiators. So what would be your top tips, Carol, in keeping a greyhound warm? Because I know they've got such thin fur and thin layer skin. So what's your top tips for that?
Yeah, I mean, any greyhound that's living in a centrally heated house will have a very thin coat because they don't need the thick woolly coat that they actually grow if they're living outside. And if you've ever seen dogs coming over as puppies from Ireland, they quite often look like teddy bears. They've got such thick coats, so they can do it. But because we keep them in centrally heated houses, they don't need them, so they don't produce a thick winter coat. So with our greyhounds, we just need to make sure if we're taking them out in the cold, we wrap them up. So that usually means a coat. The other thing you've got to watch in winter, when they start icy the roads and pavements, when they start putting salt down, that can cause really severe irritation in the paws if they're walking on salty roads or salty pavements. So it's really important to wash their feet when they come back from the walk. They don't like that very much either. But if you use nice lukewarm water and just place their paws in and soak them and then dry them off thoroughly, then that'll make sure that they're not keeping any of the salt in the skin between the toes, and that's where it can get really sore. So really important to do that.
Is that just going off on that with the ice and the salt on the roads? Is that toxic to them, or like so when we're walking them, do we have to be extra careful for them sniffing and having like a little lick on some salt or something? What's the deal with that?
Yeah, I don't think they tend to lick the salt, but it wouldn't do them any good if they did. But yeah, if you see your greyhound trying to lick salt, then try and prevent them from doing that. But yeah, none of mine have ever shown any interest in salt. But if they had it on their feet and then started licking, that could cause a problem.
Okay, so it's always best just to be on the safe side and give them a little wash as they come in.
Yeah,
So sure, it'll
absolutely.
keep their paws warm as well. So um,
Yes.
going back to the coldness and the coats and stuff, when we put out the Q&A questionnaire for everyone to ask questions for the webinar, we had one person ask about how do you know if your greyhound's cold? Like what signs do we need to be looking for? Do you have any tips and signs that we should be looking for with our greyhounds?
I think just an inability to rest, really. If they're cold, they won't be able to rest properly because they're cold. They've got to be pretty warm to stretch out and rest properly. So, or a greyhound that's trying to curl up. We know that greyhounds don't often sleep curled up. So if they're curled up, that usually means they're a bit cold. Um, we found out that Henry was getting cold overnight when the heating was off because he'd wake us up really early. So we bought him a fleece coat to wear overnight, and he's much happier now, and he sleeps through till, whenever we want to get up in the morning. So it's worth doing if you think that they're getting cold overnight. Maybe buy one of the thin fleece coats to use overnight. Or pajamas if you're confident you can get their legs into pajamas.
They are really cute. I've seen quite a few on multiple online shops, and I keep thinking about getting mine some, but I'm just like you say, I'm just not too sure if they would like having all their legs put into different like sleeves and stuff. But they do look
Yeah,
really cute.
that's a
Perfect.
problem.
So some of the questionnaires, we'll go through some of them because I think some of them will probably have a bit of detail with them. So we may as well start on that. But so one of the main questions that we had from a lot of the viewers was how can we prevent corns on pads? Or once you've got the corn, what's the best thing to do?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of research going into causes of corns, and at one point they were quite excited because they thought they were caused by a virus, that causes warts. Um, that really hasn't worked out, so we don't think it's a virus now. We think either some dogs are just more genetically predisposed to them, so it's all to do with genetics, um, or sometimes if they've had an old injury, which means that the toe is sort of coming down on the ground a bit harder than normal. So it's sort of not in the correct place. That can make it more likely that they'll get a corn. Things like walking on hard surfaces they're more likely to develop the corns if they're, more liable to get corns. Um, People have talked about protective boots. I don't know if you've ever tried to get a greyhound to wear protective boots, but I have when Henry's had a cut on his foot and he hates boots and he would never ever walk in boots. If he's got one foot in a boot, he'll hold it up and try and walk on three legs rather than use the boot. So good luck if you're going to try protective boots. But that would work if you could get your greyhound to wear boots. But it's difficult to tell which greyhounds are going to develop corns. So I think preventing them, you could be causing a lot of heartache for yourself trying to get boots on your greyhound if your greyhound's one of those that's never going to develop them. For example, I mean, Henry's our fifth greyhound, and I've never had a greyhound that had corns. So obviously really lucky, but I know they are quite common in all sorts of hounds, really. So it's not just greyhounds that get them, whippets get them as well, lurchers get them as well. So, it just seems to go with the territory, and maybe it's something to do with them not having as much fat on their pads as other dogs. I don't know. That's just a bizarre explanation that I've thought of just now. It's probably completely wrong, but it's caused by the outer layer of the skin just going mad and producing too much. So you get this really thickened, usually circular appearance on the pad. As for treatment, they tried cutting them out for years. 50% of them recurred after the surgery, so that wasn't really very helpful. The latest thinking, well, it's been around for a few years now, is that you actually remove a section of the tendon running down the back of the leg. And you can either do that down near the foot or further up near the wrist, because it's usually the front feet that get corns. It's more common in the front feet. So a surgery where they actually remove a piece of the tendon and that straightens the toe and takes the pressure off the pad that's got the corn, and the corn heals up miraculously because it's no longer in contact with the ground so much. It's not getting pressed onto the ground. So that seems to be the best treatment for it. But yeah, prevention, I don't think there's really a magic answer to that, I'm afraid.
We've had it once with a greyhound that's had a corn, just using like a file or like a pumice stone on the actual pad to loosen the hard skin. Is that something that's like done nowadays, or is that something of like way back in the day sort of thing? What's the thought on that one?
Yeah, I mean, with that, really, all you're doing is taking off some of the corn and it's going to keep growing and you're going to have to keep doing it. So, yeah, you're never going to be free of having to file the corn if you do that.
No, that does make sense. So the next question is a bit of a long one, so I'm going to just read off the screen. So someone wrote in, my 11-year-old female has had an inflamed and engorged toe. She has had x-rays and a CT scan of the entire area. It is confirmed that there are no foreign objects buried in the paw. She's taking antibiotics and we soak it and has anti-inflammatory medication, but she doesn't seem to be improving. The scan showed possible area of a bone infection in her toe. She's very uncomfortable and is very painful whenever you touch it or she bumps it. There seems to be no tumours, fractures, or growths. What, in your opinion, is going on? Thank you so much for offering your knowledge and experience.
Oh, you're very welcome. This is a difficult one. I mean, if the vet suspects a bone infection, they're really hard to get rid of. Ideally, you would find out what sort of bacteria was causing the infection and then target it with an antibiotic that worked against that bacteria. Unfortunately, that means going into the bone in the first place to take a biopsy to see what you can find in there. That then runs the risk of spreading the infection further. So I'm just wondering if the vet suggested taking the toe off, actually removing the toe, because A, that would give instant relief to the poor dog who's obviously in a lot of pain with this. The other option would be to try antibiotics for an extended period of time. I mean, we're even talking months to try and deal with bone infections. So that could mean that, until you know whether that antibiotic's working, the poor dog's still going to be, limping around on this foot. So yeah, I think if she was mine, I would consider taking the toe off, and making sure that, all the infection went with it. So wherever the infection seems to be on the CT scan or the X-ray, making sure that the toe is removed at the joint above that, so that hopefully the infection's all removed at the same time.
Perfect. Hopefully, whoever's asked that question can obviously relay that back to their vet, or like you say, the vet may have already offered that.
Yeah.
So, fingers crossed. Hopefully, the dog's okay. Bless her. The next one, the question was, how do you deal with soft tissue injuries?
I suppose it depends whether you see it happen, first of all. So if your greyhound's running about and then pulls up lame or screams, and suggests that something has gone badly wrong, it's trying to find out where that injury is. That can be difficult for an owner to try and pinpoint where the problem is. They're very common injuries like muscle muscle sprains, strains, even ripping muscles. If they're really, having a mad zoom about, they can tear muscles. So you might see some swelling. The idea, if it's just happened and you've seen and you can localize where it is to put some ice on the area. Now, you don't want to do that for too long, but an ice pack, so just some frozen vegetables in a tea towel is fine as an ice pack. Just hold it on for about 15 minutes, then leave it off for about 20 minutes, and then put it back on for 15 minutes. And that'll sort of take down the swelling. It also gives some pain relief as well if you make the area quite cold. Really, though, getting soft tissue injuries repaired just requires rest and anti-inflammatories to make the dog more comfortable. Physiotherapy can help once the injury's starting to get better, keeps everything moving, prevents fibrosis, which is where you get sort of really fibrous tissue forming around the area of an injury. So physiotherapy is great, including hydrotherapy. We know that works really well. Things like, I mean, there's all sorts of alternative treatments, laser therapy, shockwave therapy, that sort of thing. There's not really the evidence that they work very well. Shockwave therapy can be useful for ligament injuries. I think there's a piece of research that says it's quite effective then. But to be honest, you can pay a lot of money for these types of therapies without any evidence that they actually do anything. So I really think that physiotherapy is the best way to promote recovery from soft tissue injuries after the initial injury has been dealt with. So ice packs, for a couple of days after that, it's quite useful to use heat pads as well, just make up a sort of warm version of an ice pack and hold that there. And that actually brings in the sort of healing cells that you need round about the injury. So you can do that. And some people say alternating hot and cold packs can be quite useful as well. So you're bringing in the blood supply with all the healing cells and also preventing too much swelling and inflammation with the cold packs. So yeah, if you see it and you know where it is, that's what you can do. If you've got no idea when it happened or where it is, then best thing is to go to your vet and ask them to find out what's happened.
Perfect. Yes. We've always had the greyhound scream of death in the garden when they've been playing too much and they've just bumped a toe or something. They're the most
Yeah,
dramatic breed going. So sometimes it's probably not even something to worry about in the sense of they've probably just literally bumped themselves. They have a magic rub and a little kiss on their forehead and then they're off again.
exactly. Yeah, with no
It's
sign of any
very,
lameness. Yeah.
yeah, they're so dramatic, but they're very cute, so they get away with it. So the next question is, I'm actually really interested to hear about this one. Is are greyhounds calmer than whippets?
Well, I mean, I know quite a few people that have got whippets, and they are a little bit, I would say, more sort of excitable than greyhounds, I would say. I think that probably goes back to where they were developed from, because there's different ideas about how whippets came into being. One being that they chose really small greyhounds and bred them together, which probably means there was a lot of inbreeding. So that would explain why they're a little bit more hyper than greyhounds. The other theory is that they used small terriers with greyhounds, which is an interesting thought. So if there's any terrier blood in there, that's going to make them a little bit more hyper.
Yeah.
And the third theory is that they used Italian greyhounds. Now, I wasn't even sure how long Italian greyhounds had been around, because I thought they were quite a recent development of people wanting smaller and smaller versions of everything. But no, they've been around for centuries.
Really?
So apparently there were Italian greyhounds around when whippets were being created. So could have been Italian greyhound crosses.
Yeah. Oh
But
wow.
again, yeah, Italian greyhounds tend to be a little bit neurotic. So
That's amazing.
so
Smaller
you can
version.
see, yeah, that. I mean, having said that, I know some very calm whippets. So, but yeah, I think if you want a guaranteed calm dog, I would say probably go for a greyhound rather than a whippet.
Sleep 16 hours a day.
Yeah. Okay, so the next question is, what's the best way to keep my greyhound's teeth clean? We give him an ostrich bone, and I try to brush his teeth regularly, as well as having them professionally cleaned once or twice, but there's still a stinky breath. What else can I try?
Yeah, and this is the number one health problem in greyhounds is periodontitis. There was a nice study that looked at, greyhound vet visits back in 2016, I think was the year that they chose, and they found that teeth problems was way above anything else in terms of number of visits. So it is a constant battle. I think it's an interesting one because greyhounds have a higher incidence of dental problems than any other breed with the same shaped skull. And we don't really know why, because, you would expect that little dogs with flattened faces might have problems with their teeth because their mouths are really squashed. We don't really know why greyhounds have so many problems with their teeth. And I think the only answer really is to brush their teeth. And I know that's really difficult, but there's a nice study that says even if you can do it once or twice a week, it makes a difference. So it's not that you've got to do it like twice a day or anything mad like that. If you can only do it once or twice a week, you're still going to improve their dental health. chews are great. I mean, if you can get them something that lasts a little bit longer than 2 seconds. So I usually use things like pig's ears, or they've now got bull's ears as well. Um, Big pieces of beef hide, the really big bones that they take ages to chew through, they really help as well. So anything that gets them exercising their jaws and really, using their teeth to break bits off or chew through things, that really, really helps. Um, but yeah, there's again, it's a bit like the corns thing. There's no magic answer. I think if you look at racing greyhounds, I mean, trainers are now very good at cleaning their teeth. So usually they come off the track with actually not too bad dental hygiene. Um, Whereas in the past, perhaps it was a problem with the trainers not doing anything with their teeth. But now they do seem to use toothbrushing as part of the regular care. So usually when they finish racing, their teeth aren't too bad. It's when they get into pet homes, that's when they seem to get worse. And I think just continuing brushing if you can. And most racing greyhounds will be used to having their teeth brushed, so it's not that you're going to be fighting them or anything. They're quite used to having it done. So I think just carrying on, as I say, even if you can only do it once or twice a week, that's going to make a difference.
Perfect. Yeah, because there's nothing worse when a greyhound or a dog comes to your face and like you want to say hello and you're just hit by
Yeah,
the smell.
yeah,
So I suppose
absolutely.
it's just something with the breed, I guess.
Yeah,
Not like
yeah.
obviously to put you off with the breed or anything, because like with all the greyhounds I've had, it's only been, within like one or two. But like you say, it's just getting them used to brushing the teeth. Because I know
Mhm.
like we've had ones before that just don't like their teeth being brushed, but we just did it as in like one tooth a day and gradually was able to do the whole set over like,
Yeah,
a couple of weeks. And they
exactly.
then
Yeah.
they realised it actually wasn't that bad. They were just being,
Exactly, and rewarding them as soon as you finished so that they associate it with something nice. Starting with the front teeth because they're easy to get at. You just lift up the lip, and you can get access to the big canine teeth and just do them to start with, and reward, and just keep doing it, and hopefully they'll start to associate getting their tooth brushed with something nice.
yeah. That's a good idea. So the next question is, are there any symptoms that may get missed when it comes to signs of cancer? As I've heard it's quite common with greyhounds. Would it be the usual weight loss or loss of appetite, or is there anything else I should be vigilant for?
Yeah, this is a good question. And if we're talking about cancer in greyhounds, the most common cancer is osteosarcoma, the bone cancer. There was a study in America of retired greyhounds that were pets there and what they died of, and they found that when it came to cancer, 50% of cancers in US greyhounds were osteosarcoma or bone cancer. There was a similar study done over here, and they found it was only about 20%. So it might be that American greyhounds, being bigger, are more prone to osteosarcoma, but it's still quite common over here. You do hear quite a few tales of greyhounds with bone cancer, unfortunately. Um, so obviously, if it's bone cancer, lameness is the first sign that you'll see. And I think the one message I would get out to you is if your dog suddenly goes lame, don't assume it's arthritis or just old age. Get it checked out, because the earlier you can find bone cancer, the more things you have that you can do about it, the more options you have. If it's not diagnosed till late, then usually it's already spread, so somewhere else in the body. So the earlier you get it, the better. And certainly there's lots of three-legged greyhounds on Twitter who have had a leg removed because they had osteosarcoma, and they're still alive years later, which is great to see. But it's one of these things you've got to catch early. And it really depends where the cancer is. If it's anything else, as I say, bone cancer is going to usually be in the bones of the legs. It's very unusual to be anywhere else. Any sort of bowel cancer, any dog can get bowel cancer, then yes, it's going to be things like diarrhea that doesn't really respond to anything else. If it was in the stomach, it would be vomiting, would be an early sign. Having said that, most cases of vomiting are due to them eating something that they shouldn't have. So don't instantly think if your greyhound starts vomiting, oh, it must be cancer. It's actually not a very usual cancer for greyhounds, stomach cancer. If it was something like a blood cancer, like leukemia or something like that, then the first sign really is that they just have no energy, might be off their food. But that would show up on a blood test quite quickly. So again, if your greyhound's just not quite right, then taking them to the vet for a check is always recommended. Skin cancer usually pops up as lumps or bumps. They'll appear and they'll keep growing. So again, the earlier you can get them, the more you can do about them. So if there's an odd lump that's appeared and it seems to be growing, then again, go to your vet and discuss surgery to remove it and see what it is.
The next one is, how do I explain to a vet about the greyhound kidney and blood situation that they may not know about?
Yes, this is a good question. So I think as an owner, if you're taking your greyhound in for blood tests, you can just slip it in, just say, oh, I presume that greyhound blood results are a bit odd when compared with other dogs. And if the vet sort of looks surprised, then you say, oh, maybe it would be a good idea if you perhaps had a bit of a look at that, because it can be quite misleading if you get the results back and it looks very abnormal, but actually for a greyhound it's quite normal. So I think just gently slipping it into the conversation if you're taking a greyhound in for blood tests. Yeah.
The next one is, how do we deal with itchy and flaky skin with greyhounds that are shedding fur?
I think really helping them as much as you can by brushing them, and using the old training kennels trick. The thing that works best for getting rid of excess coat in greyhounds is a hacksaw blade. It works really, really well. So get your greyhound used to being brushed with a hacksaw blade. You'll just be amazed at the amount of coat that comes out if you use that. And that's what they use in a lot of training kennels to get rid of excess coat. Just making sure that there's no parasites. Greyhounds can get fleas. Some people think they can't, but they can. So just making sure there's no fleas around. So you're using regular anti-flea treatment. If there's bald patches developing, then there's something a bit more serious going on. You've probably got a skin condition there, some sort of allergy or something. So again, worth getting checked out by the vet. But if it's just normal coat coming out, you can get quite a lot of scurf as well. Just getting rid of it as much as you can yourself. There's two ways that helps. It makes obviously the greyhound feel more comfortable because the excess coat's being removed. And as I say, in centrally heated houses, they don't need that extra coat. But also, if they're grooming themselves and take in lots of hair, that can cause inflammation in their stomach. And they can, get a bit of what we call gastritis. So they can get sort of a bit sick and off their food because the hair is actually causing irritation in their stomach. So really important that they don't take that in when they're grooming themselves. So remove it for them.
Would you recommend like baths or anything, or is that a bit of a myth? Or
They hate baths. They really hate baths. I mean, if you've got an odd greyhound that loves being bathed, of course you can bath them, but most greyhounds just will stand there looking pathetic if you try and bath them, or will fight to get out.
yeah, no, we've had that with ours as well, so they're not
Yeah.
massive fans of
So
them.
I think don't bath them if you don't need to. If they roll in something really disgusting, then obviously you'll need to bath them. But
Yeah.
but they'll hate it, and they'll hate you for a little while until it's time for dinner.
And then last question is, have you got any tips for sensitive stomach and food allergies with greyhounds and to ensure firm toilet habits?
Yeah, this is again quite a common problem with greyhounds. Getting them onto a food that suits them and then just sticking to that is the answer. Trying lots of different foods doesn't work because although you might think, oh, they'll get bored having the same thing every single day, actually that's what they need. It seems to suit their digestive system better. They get the same thing every day. So finding something that suits them, um, perhaps using one of the manufacturers that guarantee that the same goes into every single bag of their food, um, rather than the ones that say meat and animal derivatives, which means all sorts of different stuff's going in. And it could
Yeah.
be one of these stuff that they put in that's causing a problem with your greyhound. So you need to know exactly what's going into the food. So get a food where the protein source is specified. So it's either turkey or lamb or salmon or chicken. And just finding which of these your greyhound can cope with, can digest properly, and everything that's coming out the back end looks firm and normal. And if you find that food, stick to it and don't change it. Just keep going on that food day after day. I don't know about you, but Henry's on the same food every single day, and every time it's breakfast time or dinner time, he's there looking really excited, wanting his food. You put it down, he doesn't go, oh, this again. You know, he tucks in and yeah, really enjoys it. So don't think they need the same variety in their food that we do. They don't. Get them on a food that suits them and stick to it.
And a lot of people suggest like grain free. Now, is that the latest phase, or is that something that's quite good for greyhounds?
I don't think there's any evidence that grain-free is particularly better for greyhounds, and there is a bit of a problem with grain-free in that it actually leaves out some of the essential nutrients that they need for heart health. So a grain-free diet is not really the answer, and I wouldn't want to feed grain-free to greyhounds, I don't think, unless they had a genuine wheat allergy, and there is such a thing where if they have anything with wheat in it, they get instant diarrhea. But you'll know that if you feed something with wheat and your greyhound gets instant diarrhea, then it's probably got a wheat allergy. But it's not very common in greyhounds, actually, wheat allergy.
Okay. Is there an allergy that is common in greyhounds, or is it just different dogs?
It, Different dogs have different things. Henry's actually allergic to chicken. And we
Oh,
found that out because we bought some really expensive chicken and rice food for him, and it went straight through him. So now he has to avoid chicken.
oh bless them.
Poor Henry.
Eh,
But you can
so
have turkey, interestingly.
that's really interesting because you think they'd be quite similar, wouldn't you?
Yeah, no,
So,
completely different actually. So
oh bless them. At least he's not missing out on too much.
no, no. And you can
Um,
have Christmas dinner.
of course. Do you get him? Do you make it yourself, or do you buy like like the posh dog food Christmas dinner things that you can get?
Oh no, you'll have a bit of our Christmas dinner.
As you
Same, I
should.
think. Perfect. So that's the end of the questions that we've had from the people. There was quite a variety of interesting questions there, which is really interesting. Tom, is there anything you would like to ask, or anything you'd like to add?
I'd just like to say a big thank you to Carol, firstly for this webinar, for joining us and giving up your time, and for everything else you've done with us. If you've not seen already, Carol's written an article for Bonfire Night that went out earlier this month on our website, and there'll be plenty more to come from her. So make sure you check that out at greyhoundhominguk.com.
Perfect. And Carol, any last words that you'd like to add as well?
I think just have a good winter and an excellent festive season with your hounds.
Perfect. Well,
Thank
yes.
you very much for listening.
Seconding that, thank you very much for taking the time out of your day to come and chat with us. I know I learned a lot as well, so it's really interesting. But yeah, thank you very much for that. And like Tom said, there is a blog coming out around the festive period that you're going to be writing, so that's exciting. But yes, thank you very much for the time today. And we're hoping to be back for a spring webinar. So we'll be putting another post out about questions or anything related around spring and any toxic things or anything that might be around spring. I'm sure Carol will have some ideas to bring to the webinar as well. But until then, thank you very much for taking the time to watch our webinar.